Alright guys, what's going on? So today I'm just going to do a voiceover for a push day workout that I did the other day. This is not from any specific program or anything that I've been doing. This is kind of just a normal day. This is how I normally train. I'm doing a lot of volume training right now, a little bit of strength training, but mostly my workouts are focused on hypertrophy. Obviously trying to build strength as well, but primarily hypertrophy focused. So this is just a couple movements that I did to get warm. I always use a band to get going, just kind of get my rotator cuffs all warmed up and get my shoulders plenty loose. And then I'll grab usually 10 to 15 pound dumbbells, just do some shoulder work, lateral raises, front raises, rear delt flies, and then I'll do some dumbbell chest flies as well, just to get some blood into my chest and just kind of get my upper body warmed up and ready to go. Like I said, usually lightweight. I don't really pay attention to how the weight feels. The main reason for this is just to get blood into the upper body and get warmed up. So did a few sets of these. Nothing too crazy. Not trying to tire myself out or anything. Just a few sets to kind of get the pump started, and then we jump right into it. So usually warm up for maybe 5 to 10 minutes. And on top of warming up the muscles and getting blood into whatever muscle I'm trying to train, I also try to kind of like get into the zone mentally. Easy to do today because obviously this gym is super empty. On top of the mobility sort of movements, I will jump on the pull-up bar and do some pull-ups. I think having a loosened up back kind of helps when you're benching. It feels more stable. And then on top of that, also just kind of do some dead hangs just to, again, get my shoulders good and loose, make sure everything is, flowing as it should be, get all the cracks out. So now we're jumping into my first set. I did a bunch of flat bench volume today. So here, just obviously getting warmed up with just the bar. Just a few sets to make sure my shoulders are feeling good, make sure the movement feels fine, just to really kind of get the form down. Even though I've done it a million times, I always start with only the barbell. Then jumped on to just the plate. I treated this as kind of a warm-up set as well. I knew I was going to go heavier than 135, so I just did a few sets here of a few reps just to, again, make sure everything is flowing right, really focus on form and keeping my back, keep my shoulders back, really squeezing through the chest and making sure everything felt good. So now we jump into my first working set. This is essentially, I did 5 sets of 30. So you do 10 reps with a narrow grip. Right here, I went all the way to basically where the knurling ends. So my hands are all the way inside. And then move out slightly to more of a grip that I would normally use and do 10 more. Goal here just to really limit the amount of time that you spend resting between each set of 10. So this gets pretty tricky. Basically 5 sets of 30. So you're hitting whatever that is, 150 reps with very minimal rest time. So after the regular grip, you go out a little bit wider and do 10 reps with a wider grip. So like I said, 5 sets of these. Really do your best to stay at the same weight throughout all the 5 sets. But if you need to take some weight off towards the end, that's totally fine. Goal ideally would actually be to add weight as you go up, but that gets kind of tricky. So did 5 sets of those and then stayed on the flat bench and did some reverse grip presses. I really like these. They kind of, they really isolate. They add some more tricep, I feel like. And I just feel like it isolates your chest a little bit more. And it's kind of a different movement than just, your regular everyday flat bench. So kind of good to mix it up sometimes. And then I superset this with some plate presses. Yep. Just stayed on the same bench, grabbed the plate, just did, I did 20 reps with the plate raises between each benching set. So altogether I did 4 sets of 30. 10 with the reverse grip, and then 20 with the plate presses. So again, stay in super high volume. This will absolutely kick your butt. Really try to do your best to stay heavy on those two. So then I jumped into this fly press variation. I really like using this after I've done a bunch of volume because I feel like the fly portion of it really loosens up your chest. And these aren't something that you can go super heavy on, so it's kind of a rest and a stretch. So I believe I did sets of 12 here. I did 5 sets of 12. These are kind of confusing, so I like to use lighter weight than I probably could and just really focus on going slow, keeping full control throughout the entire movement. Goal is bring the weights out as wide as you possibly can, and then bring them in as if you were just doing a normal dumbbell bench press. So, like I said, kind of tricky to get down, but just really go slow and take your time on it. I like it. It's one of my favorite chest movements. Just gets a super full stretch. And then most of the time when I do that, just because it's easiest, I will superset it with this hex press. So just bring the same weight in all the way inside your chest so that they are touching. And then I think I did 15 or 20 reps here. So a lot of volume again. And this, I really love hex pressing. I could probably go a little bit heavier, but just keep the same weight makes it easier. So after that, jumped into some shoulder raises. I just superset these with the fly presses to kind of get my shoulders warmed up a little bit. So this is a little bit of a lighter weight. Just did some raise variations, kind of like I did when I was warming up. 6 on each side to the front, and then 12 lateral raises as well. And then I also threw in some rear delt flies at the end. So not super heavy weight, but with the superset, it did kind of hurt. But yeah, the main focus of this movement was just to get my shoulders warm. Picked a movement for each head of the shoulder, anterior, medial, and the rear delt. And that way the whole shoulder was targeted, and I was ready to go into my heavy shoulder movements by the time I was done with that. So again, this is my, I guess you could call this my compound shoulder movement for the day. Not super heavy. I'm using 35s here for a movement called crabs. Not a lot of people do these, but I really love them. They really isolate the anterior deltoid really well. So I think they're a pretty good movement. It's essentially just a fly variation for your shoulders. So set up the bench as if you were going to do a normal, overhead dumbbell press, but rather than keeping your hands at a neutral grip, you turn them in and then keep the weight out wide, almost like you're flexing your biceps or something like that. And then I superset them with as you can see, just a regular dumbbell overhead press to kind of finish off my shoulders. After you do several of the crabs, your shoulders are pretty beat, so just to finish them off with some regular presses is pretty good. And then I superset that with this seated easy bar press, really again isolating the anterior head of the shoulder. Focus here is really just keep your elbows in tight and focus on pressing with your shoulders rather than with your triceps or your chest. So I believe I did 4 sets of 15 or so on each of those movements. So after that, jumped into some heavy lateral raises. Lateral raises, I will do lateral raises all day, every day, all my shoulder days. It's one of my favorite shoulder movements. I think I like the look that a big medial head gives your physique. Makes your shoulders look well capped and just makes you look up pretty wide. So I like to do those. I did sets of 12, I think, with a heavier weight, and then went straight from those into a upright barbell row. These I don't do very often because in the past it's been kind of a movement that will cause some injury for me. But usually I just stay pretty light, focus on that mind-muscle connection between your shoulders, and then really just focus on pulling up with your shoulders, just to get as much use out of them as you can. So then jump straight into some skull crushers. These again, try not to go very heavy on because they do hurt my elbows. In order to avoid hurting yourself or injury of any sort, just be sure to keep your elbows in tight on these ones. And then, just be careful about really controlling the weight and getting a full flex at the top. So usually, anytime I do an easy bar movement, I will do as many as I can, just like that, over the head, and then I'll bring it in and do as many presses as I can. So I think I did about 12 to 15 overhead presses, and then I moved into maybe like 10 to 15 more of just those regular presses. And then after that, these are also a variation of a skull crusher. I just like to do these unilaterally. So grab a lighter dumbbell and then obviously one arm at a time while the other one is being held up. Be sure that you're in a full extension so that your tricep is being flexed and used at the top. So you can see that in my closer arm that as it's at the top, it's sitting there and my elbow is fully flexed, so my tricep is also flexed. Do as many as you can with each arm. And then I think I superset these with some push-ups, so some diamond push-ups. These get pretty tough, so I think that's a really good movement for tricep isolation. And then hopped into some cable press downs. This movement is usually a finisher for me. I'll usually go through my entire push day, and then when I feel like I've got nothing left, I'll do some work on the cables. So for this particular set, I do something where I go from 10 down to 5. So I'll do 10 reps, rest for 10 seconds, do 9 reps, rest for 10 seconds, do 8 reps, rest for 10 seconds, do 7 reps, rest for 10 seconds, do 6 reps, rest for 10 seconds, and then do 5 reps, and then rest for like 30 seconds to a minute, and do that all again. So from 10 down to 5 is like essentially one set, and I think I did 3 or 4 of those. So a lot of volume in a very short amount of time. But like I said, this is a really good movement to finish off your triceps with. And oftentimes, obviously you have a lot of control over how much weight you use. So if you need to, you can stay super light on these. And I like to really just focus on, getting as tight of a squeeze at the bottom as I can. As you can see at the bottom of each rep, I kind of flare out the rope. And that just really, rather than just pressing straight down, if you kind of flare the rope out, it allows your hands to rotate in, and therefore you get a much tighter contraction of your triceps. So try that on your next one. That's something a lot of people overlook, but again, it really helps. So finished up with those, and then jumped on the pull-up bar, and again just did a few pull-ups, did a few second dead hangs just to kind of let my shoulders fully stretched out. And this is usually how I end every workout, just to kind of decompress my entire body. So that's a normal push day. Looks pretty similar to what I've been doing lately. So a lot of volume and super challenging. So thanks for watching, and give this a shot on your next push day.